What is up, guys? If you're watching this video, you are interested in what the three best companions are for BG Free. This is a viewer request, so thank you guys for the people that commented, and this is also the winner of a poll. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down the three best companions in BG Free in three different categories. So the first category is if you're a complete newbie to the game. This is your first playthrough. I'm going to be explaining what the three best companions are for that playthrough. The second is for role players, for people that really want to dig into the lore of the game. I'm going to be breaking down what the three best companions are to learn more about the BG3 universe, the actual Baldur's Gate backstory, and who I think has the deepest storylines. The last part of the video is going to be for honor mode players. So this is for people that actually want to beat the hardest difficulty in the game. And yes, I have beaten it and gotten the golden dice. So these are the three best companions that give some stat bonus or in some way advantageous to a honor mode challenge run. So let's get right into it and get into the first playthrough. So the very first thing we're going to look at, guys, is if you just bought BG Free and you're playing on the PlayStation, you're playing on the PC, you're playing on the Xbox, what is the best free companions for you for your first playthrough? So the first pick that I have is Shadowheart. Shadowheart is a companion you're going to be meeting right at the beginning of the game, and I really feel like Shadowheart is pretty imperative to the whole main story. So with Shadowheart, I don't want to get into too many spoilers, but in Act 2, you're going to be basically doing something that significantly contributes to a major decision in her companion quest. And Shadowheart's whole story is most tied to the main quest of the game. So because of that, I feel like Shadowheart is a really, really natural companion to have in your party. And I do believe the devs intended you to have Shadowheart in your main party for the first playthrough of the game. Now, the only bad part about Shadowheart for your first playthrough of the game is that she is a Trickery Domain Cleric, naturally, in terms of the story. And Trickery Domain Clerics are not good, guys. That is just something that I want to say. I have a lot of class and build guide videos to explain what the reasons why Trickery Domain isn't good for a cleric. But I do believe Shadowheart is really intrinsic to you having a first natural playthrough of the game. And I would highly recommend her for your first playthrough. Next up, I'm going to go on to Karlach. Karlach, in my opinion, is the emotional heart and soul of the game. I really think her picture should have been more prominent, kind of on the box art and the cover art for the game, because honestly, I think Karlach is probably the most emotionally invested you're going to get into a character in BG Free for the majority of players. Now, obviously, some people are going to have, different opinions on this, and please let me know down in the comments who your favorite companion is and why. But for me, it is Karlach. It will always be Karlach. I really do feel like both her voice acting, the character itself, the emotional journey, without getting into too many spoilers, the conclusion of that journey. There's a lot of reasons that I feel Karlach is a bittersweet but a beautiful, beautiful story. And I do believe you should absolutely have Karlach in your party for the first playthrough. And in my opinion, even though this may be divisive, I feel like Karlach is the most natural romance choice. And for a lot of players, especially if you're playing Dirge, but a lot of players, I really do feel like Karlach is the one that it makes the most sense to romance. So that's just my personal opinion. The third person I think that is imperative for your first playthrough of the game is going to be Gale. Now, Gale is somebody that has a lot of advantages for the first playthrough. Number one, when you think of a fantasy game like BG3, having a prototypical wizard in the party is just, it makes good sense. It gets you kind of deep into that role playing experience. And Gale is a nice guy right from the very start of the game. Without getting into too many spoilers, because I do want to keep this part of the video kind of spoiler free, he has a lot of things that basically allow you to basically skip the final fight of the game, which is an epic scene. I do think whoever hasn't seen that should choose that route at one time. But yes, just his backstory with Mystria and, the whole situation with Gale, kind of understanding him more as a character, that he's so down to earth, even though he's actually a very powerful wizard and a very accomplished wizard. Gale is just a good guy, a very good guy, a very good companion. Every time I have Gale in my party and I'm hearing him in dialogue, I really enjoy myself. I feel like Gale is my best friend in the game. I love having Gale in the party. And so these three companions, Karlach, Shadowheart, and Gale, kind of comprise, I feel like, a very, very natural first playthrough of the game. And in my opinion, will give you that kind of vanilla or authentic BG free experience. So those are my three recommendations for the first playthrough of the game. Now let's go on to the role playing element, or who I feel would be the best characters to kind of learn more about the lore or the backstory of BG Free. So this is for people that really love the lore and want to dig into the backstory. Who are the three best companions you should bring into your party? So the first companion that I would recommend is Asterion, both in the Ascended route and in the Spawn route. So Asterion really has like two very fundamentally different playstyles depending on the choices you make in the story. Now, to talk about this roleplay element of the video, there will be mild spoilers. I do want to just put that out there. If you've never played through the game for the first time, you may want to go to the first and to the third parts of this video, which are a little bit less spoilery. But Asterion is a really great character. He has a lot of great moments. He probably has the most tragic backstory because he did have a lot of history of abuse and just a lot of things that are very dark. There's a lot of dark topics for YouTube. I don't want to delve too much into that. But he has two main storylines, which is the Ascended and the Spawn route. The Ascended route sees him really becoming super power hungry and really changes his personality a lot. Where the Spawn route, I think, is probably like the good Asterion playthrough, I guess you could say. But you learn a lot. You learn a lot about vampires. You learn a lot about the backstory of Baldur's Gate. You learn a lot in Asterion's quest line and companion quest. And I really do feel like if you're trying to dig into the lore of Baldur's Gate, I do think Asterion is a very natural choice. So he is my first choice for the roleplay aspect of this video. The second choice is going to be Halsin. And the reason that I pick Halsin is not only do you learn a lot more about druids in general by playing through Halsin's companion quest line, but the big thing about Halsin is you get a lot more backstory into the Shadow Curse in Act 2. So for those of you who've delved into Act 2 or have completed the game, you're going to know that without Halsin, you can't really flee Act 2 of the Shadow Curse, and you lose a lot of the flavor and kind of the nuance of Act 2. So without Halsin in your party, you kind of lose out on like a third of the game, realistically. So I do feel like Halsin, if you're wanting to dig into the Baldur's Gate 3 universe, is a really important member to have on your team. And yeah, Halsin is just a really good character. I do like him. I do think he's somebody that's very easy to get along with. Another good thing about Halsin that a lot of people don't know if they haven't played the game that much is that Halsin is one of the only characters that you can basically be in a romance with and be in a romance with another character. Now, sometimes that other character will not like that you basically are trying to have a polygamous relationship. But just to put that out there, Halsin is one of the most accepting of that type of relationship. So Halsin can be really a fun companion to have in your party. And I do believe a lot of his dialogue does help flesh out the world. Now, the third choice, maybe my most like hot take in this video, is going to be Minthira for role players. Now, just understanding the Drow Society and understanding the backstory of the Underdark, having Minthira in the party, I think, is probably the single biggest thing that will enhance your playthrough in basically Act 2, Act 3. You really do get a lot more nuance and subtlety if you have Minthira in your party in the later parts of the game. And I think some of her voice dialogue and the voice actress behind Minthira did some of the best work in the game after Karlach, in my personal opinion. I do think Minthira has really really good quotes and really witty comebacks to a lot of your party members and plays off people very well. I love some of her dialogue with Gale specifically. But yeah, it's really, really good when you have Minthira in your party. And I think her journey and her progression from the start of the game, from being kind of like hilariously evil almost, to being basically redeemed into a fairly good character if you follow through her companion quest. Minthira is one of the best people to have in your party, both for the background lore and also for the character journey. So if you're a role player, you will not regret having Minthira in your party. The only thing I have to say about Minthira that I do put as a major negative to her is that if you want to play through like semi in a good playthrough and don't want to be evil, just to recruit her does take extra work. There is extra steps. You got to knock her out. There's this whole chain of things you have to do, and it is kind of annoying. So if you're playing evil, it makes a lot of sense to have Minthira, but to actually turn her to the good side, it's not like Shadowheart where that choice can be very easy to make and kind of feels natural in the game. Minthira, you have to work for, and I do think that makes her more rewarding in the end, but it is something to note. So now let's go on to an honor mode playthrough and who I feel the best fleet companions would be for that particular playstyle. So here we are at the honor mode section of the video. In honor mode, I'm going to be looking at the fleet companions that I feel really enhance your chances of beating in the game. And so a little footnote here, I'm going to try to avoid too many spoilers, but it is really imperative if you're playing honor mode to try to play as a good playthrough. Generally speaking, good playthroughs actually make the in-game easier, which is, in my opinion, the riskiest part. Most of Act 3 is the riskiest part of Baldur's Gate 3. Once you kind of understand the mechanics, I feel like Act 1 and Act 2 can be fairly safe, and there's a lot of ways you can kind of have a safety net, invisibility potions, the like, where you can kind of get out of combat, and there's not many encounters that are super risky, other than maybe the Inquisitor and the Clash, and maybe Glim in the Forge, or two of probably of the riskier encounters in Act 1, although even Glim you can kind of cheese, so really the Inquisitor is the main risk factor there. But these fleet companions are going to be the ones that really help you in the end game, and I'm going to be describing my kind of philosophy behind honor mode playthroughs. So predominantly in honor mode playthroughs, you want to have the most allies going into the final fight against the final boss. Again, we're trying to avoid major spoilers here. So the fleet companions that I would choose is number one, have Karlach. Karlach has soul coins and just generally is a barbarian. Flow Barbarian, I think, is one of the strongest builds in the game. So this is one of the few times that you can basically have a companion that has the natural class, and you can also make them into one of the strongest characters that you would want in this super optimized party. So I think having Karlach makes a lot of sense for honor mode, specifically because she does have that soul coin mechanic, and you can power her up, and also her natural builds into one of the strongest character types with the TB Flow Barbarian, which I will be doing a guide on, and I do think is one of the strongest builds for honor mode. So I would highly suggest having Karlach in your party. The second person that you need to bring in your party is Astarion. Now, the reason you want to bring Astarion and specifically tech him into the Ascended path is if you ascend Astarion, you get a 1d10 necrotic, basically, die that if you're a monk, specifically a Tavern Brawler monk, is just broken. It is extremely OP. And so if you're playing as a hyper-optimized party and you have a monk, which I would highly recommend you having a monk if you're playing an honor mode for the first time and trying to get your golden dice, Astarion just benefits you a lot here. You get a lot of benefit from Astarion, having him in the party and going through the Ascended path. So there's really no reason not to do this, and I do believe that for an honor mode playthrough, you should have Astarion in your party. The final pick that I would recommend you to have in an honor mode playthrough is actually probably one of my most divisive, which is Halsin. Now, I really split this between Shadowheart, because I do think some of the gear and some of the questing you get with like Viconia and like the Spear of Night and stuff like that, I do think Shadowheart is a really good contender here, but the reason that I would have Halsin in your party, or at least continue his quest line and actually have him at camp at the very minimum, is because you're going to miss out on a lot of XP and you're going to miss out on a lot of questing in Act 2. Now, Act 3 of the game, generally, if you're playing Honor, you're trying to maximize your experience in the early mid-game. So you want to be as high level as you can going into the Keflik fight, specifically. So generally, you want to be between like level 9.5 and 10 when you go to fight Keflik. So because of that, the end game doesn't matter as much. Like, for instance, Shadowheart and the Viconia quest, it doesn't matter as much what happens in Act 3 because normally you're going to be at level 12 there before you're fighting, at the House of Hope and the final boss and things of that nature. So you kind of reach that max XP and it doesn't matter as much. But soaking experience in Act 2 really does matter. And so I think Halcyon makes a lot of sense to have in your party, especially in this part of the game. And I would, estimate that in honor mode, you have respect a character out of his natural class. So you don't have to play Halcyon as a druid anyway. He can just be acting like a custom character in your party. So because of this, I do feel like Halcyon is a character that makes a lot of sense if you're playing honor mode for the first time. So I really hope you like this video, guys. If you do, hit that like button. It helps me out so much. Click subscribe with the notification bell. I've been having a lot of issues with people not being notified. I really do apologize about that. I can't do anything. It's YouTube. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please check out. I try to put up a video every day to two as much as I can with my busy schedule. But thank you guys so much, and I will see you in the next video.